Hey guys, welcome back to Roto Innovations, where today we're going to learn how to troubleshoot and fix a weed eater that won't start. Here we go. One of the first things you can check if you're having a problem with an engine is a spark plug. To test it, you can remove the spark plug and let it rest against the motor to ground it out. All right, now that we have the shroud removed, I can see the bottom of the spark plug, and I grounded it out just by letting it sit on the engine. And I'm going to pull start it and then see if I'm getting a spark. Which you can see a good spark coming from the bottom, so we know the spark plug is good. Now you can replace the spark plug and go on to the next step. Next, I'm gonna take the carburetor off and clean it out to make sure that all the fuel is getting to the engine. And I know there's old fuel in here, so we'll dump that out and make sure we have fresh fuel. Now that we have the carburetor unscrewed, know which hose is the fuel supply line. If you're confused about which one that is, there's usually a little filter attached to the end of the supply hose inside of the gas tank. It also should be the longer hose. You'll then remove the little cable that controls the throttle. Now that it's removed from the engine, we'll take it apart and clean it out. All right, during this process, after you take the carburetor off, there's this little plastic guard that goes in between the carburetor and the engine. You just want to inspect it, make sure one is clean and two doesn't have any cracks, so that it's getting a proper vacuum. It's a good thing that we took the carburetor apart. All this is old fuel that's gummed up. There's a bunch of dirt and grime in here. If you don't want to buy a carburetor rebuild kit, you want to be really careful when you take any of the gaskets off so you don't tear them. So this one is pretty adhered to the carburetor. I'm going to do my best to use a razor blade and remove it without ruining it. It's probably the worst carburetor I've ever seen. I normally don't have to do any kind of carburetor cleaner, but this fuel with ethanol in it has, over time, actually congealed into little solid pieces. I don't know if you can see that, of hard fuel. And that's kind of what's happened in multiple places, even here. And so in order to, look at that, that's all old fuel. So in order to get all this stuff out, I'm going to try and clean it out. I might get carburetor cleaner to soak it in, and then we'll use that compressed air to clear out all the ports. Here on the priming bulb, there's also a gasket, so I'm going to remove it from here without tearing it. So here under this gasket, you can see there's even more of that congealed ethanol fuel right here. So you want to make sure and get all that stuff as much as you can off, and then we'll soak it and then put everything back together. Now that we have everything apart, go ahead and soak it all in the fuel. I've always soaked my carburetors in gasoline, and it's always worked. I thought I might need carb cleaner for this one, but the fuel worked just fine. I started out with this cup, and when I came to check on everything, the cup had actually started to break down and melt from the gasoline, so I swapped it out with another one that I've used before. That being said, be careful what container you use when soaking your parts. All right, so I was able to get all the residue off just soaking it in this cup full of fuel, and every carburetor is different. They have a bunch of holes and pathways that get the fuel to air mixture ratio correct. All of them will have these little holes in the chamber right here that you'll want to use a wire to poke through and make sure they're clean. And I'm just going to use compressed air to blow all of these holes and make sure that everything's clean. You'll want to wear safety glasses in case any fuel residue blows out during this process. Typically, as you blow air in one port, you can feel or see the air coming out of another port. If you can't see through a port or feel air coming through, You might need to soak it again until each pathway is clear. All right, so those little tiny holes inside of the carburetor, I've actually used picture frame wire that I've unbraided. This is a piece of electrical wire because I couldn't find my other wire. And you can just use it, bend it to poke through these little holes, make sure they're clear, and then shoot it out with the air compressor, and then now we can reassemble it. All right, now that we have everything clean and reassembled, we're gonna go ahead and reassemble the entire carburetor to the engine. I did remove the gas tank and rinse it out because there was a lot of debris inside, including broken pieces of fuel line that had become brittle. That being said, I replaced the fuel lines as well. All right, we went ahead and filled it up with our 50-to-1 ratio. We're gonna go ahead and try and start it. It could run, and I marked the side of the carburetor, the high end and the low end adjustment, and those adjustments are underneath here. And what I did was I slotted using a Dremel tool and a disc, cutting disc, to make slots in here. You could buy the tool offline, but I just do this because it's free. The high-end adjustment will control how the engine runs at top speed. The low-end adjustment will control how the engine runs at idle and how it runs getting up to full throttle. Okay, so first we'll start with the high-end adjustment, and I like to start at about 2.5 turns out. So once you can screw the high and the low end all the way in, and then unscrew them about 2.5 turns, and we can start from there. All right, so that's what the high is supposed to sound like, very high pitch. And then once you get that high, back it off just a little bit because it's better to run it rich than lean. Your low end adjustment. The delay that you just heard in going from idle to top speed is due to the low end adjustment being too lean. So I'll need to back it out a little bit to let more fuel in. Once you have it set correctly, it should be extremely responsive. Alright guys, I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, comment below. If you liked it, like it, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Peace and God bless.